went to the grocery store. You filled up the gas tank. You paid for the things your family needed this month. Nothing extravagant, nothing fancy, and nothing irresponsible. You just used your credit card the way you were told a responsible adult uses their credit card. And then a few days later, your phone buzzes. It's credit karma, and your credit score just dropped. And the first thing you feel is not confusion, it's shame. Because somehow doing the right thing still left you looking like a financial risk. I want you to know something before we go any further. That drop was not your fault. It was not a sign that you're bad with money. It was a data timing problem. And once I show you how it actually works, you're never going to feel blindsided by it again. Today, we're going deep on credit utilization. This is the second biggest factor in your credit score, and it accounts for nearly 30% of your number. And it also is the one that causes the most confusion for people who are genuinely trying to do things right. We're going to cover why your score can drop even when you pay your balance in full, what the banks are actually measuring and when, and the specific numbers you need to know to move from a good score to an excellent one. Here's the thing most people do not know. The credit bureaus, Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, are not watching a live feed of your bank account. They don't actually see your bank account or your bank balance at all. They do not see the moment you make a payment. They do not know anything in real time. What they do see is a snapshot, a single number reported to them by your credit card company once a month. And the day that snapshot is taken is almost certainly not the day you think it is. Your billing cycle runs for 30 days, and at the end of those 30 days, the cycle closes. The bank generates your statement, that PDF that shows up in your email or something that you can download through an app, or I guess anymore, you can still get it by mail, but a lot of people don't. Whatever your balance is on that specific day, that is the number that gets sent to the bureaus. That is what goes on your credit report. Your payment due date is typically 21 to 25 days after that. So you might have a $900 balance reported to the bureaus on the 30th, pay it completely by the 20th of the next month, and never pay a penny of interest, and still have a $900 balance sitting on your credit report for the entire month in between. The bureau is not reporting yesterday's news. It is reporting last month's snapshot. And if that snapshot caught you mid-month before your payment cleared, it can look like you're carrying a balance that is significantly more when you're actually not. So a statement closing date is when the bank takes a snapshot and reports your balance to the bureaus. A due date is when you must pay the balance to avoid interest or late fees. Those are two completely different dates, and they are typically 21 to 25 days apart. Managing your score means managing the first one. Utilization is simple math. You take your current balance and divide it by your credit limit. If you owe $300 on a $1,000 card, your utilization is 30%. And nearly 30% of your FICO score is based on how much of your available credit you're using at the moment the snapshot is taken. That is significant weight, and the scoring models are very sensitive to specific thresholds. If you cross 30% utilization, that's where the algorithm begins registering you as a potential risk. If you cross 50%, that signal gets louder. If you get close to your limit, that score impact becomes severe. And this applies two ways: to your overall utilization across all cards combined, and to each individual card on its own. So even if your total available credit is high, one card that is near its limit can pull your score down on its own. I have seen women that are genuinely proud of themselves for how they managed their money. And obviously, they have a right to be proud. But one large purchase on a lower limit card sends a signal the algorithm reads as distress, even though they had the money. They were going to pay it. The system did not factor in their intention. It only saw that snapshot. There are arguments for times that putting a large purchase on a lower limit card makes sense. Does it have a reward program that benefits you? Does it have payment terms that make that large purchase easier to manage, like 6 or 12 months at 0 interest, or you might even get up to 2 years depending on the card? The benefit might very well outweigh the temporary credit score dip that you're going to see. And as long as you know that's coming, you can plan for it. So these are the benchmarks worth remembering. If you're under 30%, that is the widely cited rule of thumb for acceptable credit use. Under 10% is where scores tend to improve more meaningfully. 4 to 7%, that's the range commonly observed among people with scores at the top of the scale. Now, these reflect general patterns, not hard cutoffs. Your score reflects multiple factors simultaneously once you understand that the bureaus see a single monthly snapshot, not a live account balance. You realize you have more control than you thought you did. The practical move is to pay down your balance a few days before your statement closing date, rather than waiting for the actual due date on the card. If your cycle closes on the 30th, you log in on the 27th and pay it down. When the snapshot's taken, then on the 30th, it captures a much lower balance. That lower balance is what gets sent then to the bureaus. You're not gaming the system. You're paying what you owe, just a little earlier. The bank gets paid either way. The difference is what the credit report sees from that snapshot. To do this, you need to know your statement closing date for each card you have. Issuers tend to highlight the due date in their apps because that's what protects their revenue. To find the closing date, pull up a past statement, whether it's PDF or on the app, and look for billing cycle ends or next closing date. And put that date in your calendar with a reminder 2 to 3 days before it. When that reminder goes off, log in, check your balance, and pay it down to wherever you want it to land. If you're aiming for 30%, if you're aiming for 7%, you can figure out what you need to pay. Now, once you know how to control that snapshot, a natural question comes up. Should you aim for 0, or should you leave a small balance showing? And the honest answer is that there are 2 camps on this, and neither one has a definitive confirmation from any of the credit bureaus. One camp says you should always leave a small balance, something in the 1 to 3% range, because it signals to the algorithm that you are actively using credit and you're managing it well. 0 across every card, they argue, gives the model nothing to evaluate. The other camp says pay to 0 every time. It keeps you completely clear of any interest risk, and it's a cleaner habit. You don't have to do any mental math gymnastics. And any score difference between 0 and near 0 is so marginal. It's marginal enough not to be worth the mental overhead. Both positions have logic behind them, and neither has been officially confirmed as superior. What I would suggest is this: pick one approach, run it consistently for 2 or 3 months, and watch what your score does. Your credit profile is not identical to anyone else's. And the interaction between utilization and your other variables may produce a different result than what someone else has going on. You have the ability to test this for yourself. And that is actually a more useful answer than someone telling you there is only one right way. You just need to collect some data for yourself. What is not debatable is keeping your utilization low. That part's settled. Everything else is worth a little experimenting. Here's a little story time for you. I want to tell you about something that happened in my own household that I still do not have a complete explanation for. I made a purchase on one of my credit cards. It was nothing unusual. I paid it on time the way I always do. And a few days later, I checked my score and it had dropped. Not anything dramatic, but enough to notice. And I tend to pay attention, so I'm noticing minor changes. Now, here's the part that got me. My husband is an authorized user on one of my accounts, on that account specifically. He did not make a purchase. He did not pay anything. He did not log in or do a single action. And his score went up. It was the same transaction with completely opposite outcomes. For the person who actually did the work, I was penalized. Now, I want to be clear. He's not doing anything wrong. He's just sitting there benefiting, bless his heart. I pay off every balance every month except for my car. By every measure of the algorithm, for every measure that they're supposed to care about, I'm the stronger borrower. And yet, the snapshot caught me at the wrong moment and penalized me for using credit responsibly. While he picked up points for being in proximity to my account. I still do not fully understand the exact mechanics of why that particular transaction moved both scores in opposite directions. What I do understand is that once I learned how the snapshot works, when that number gets reported and why, a lot of these moments started making more sense. Not all of them, obviously, but enough to stop taking the drops personally. Before we recap, I want to ask you to do one thing, and that is open a credit card app right now, just in the background, and look for your statement closing date. Not the due date, the closing date. If you can find it, drop a number in the comments. Just the day number. I'm kind of curious. One, how many of you have ever actually been shown that you need to look for that date? And I'm a little bit curious if we see any consistent numbers showing up. So here's a journal exercise for you. And it's something worth sitting with before we wrap up. When your credit score drops, even for a reason that turns out to be mechanical and temporary, what is the first story you tell yourself about what it means? And write that down. Not the facts, the story. Because for a lot of women, that carries weight that goes so far beyond a 3-digit number. And knowing what that story is matters. So here's where we landed. Your credit score does not see your account in real time. It sees a monthly snapshot taken on your statement closing date, not your payment due date. And those different days and that gap is where the confusion lives. So remember, when you hear people talking about this, utilization is how much of your available credit appears in use at the moment of that snapshot. And it carries nearly 30% of your score weight. Staying under 30% of utilization keeps you in an acceptable range. Under 10% is where your score tends to improve more meaningfully. You can influence what that snapshot captures by paying down your balance a few days before the statement closes. You're not avoiding your bill. You're just deciding when the picture gets taken. And if your score dropped during a month where you thought you handled everything well, it does not mean you failed. It usually means the calendar worked against you. Now, you know how the calendar works. Money clarity is not about being perfect. It is simply about understanding the rules of the system, the rules of the game, well enough that the system stops catching you off guard. Remember, you have more control than you think. You've got this. You can find more about this in the 30-day Money Mindset Reset playlist that will be linked below. It's where I would tell anyone to start if they're serious about changing how money feels in their life, not just how it adds up. I'll see you there.